Welcome to Explicit Instruction Reflection by Joseph Moynihan. What is explicit instruction? Explicit instruction, according to Anita, Archer, and Hughes, is a structured, systematic, and effective methodology for teaching academic skills. Basically, explicit instruction is a series of support or scaffolds where students are guided through the learning process with clear statements about the purpose, the rationale for learning, clear expectations, and demonstrations of the instructional target, supported practice with feedback and independent mastery. What are the 6 teaching functions of explicit instruction? The 6 are review, presentation, guided practice, corrections and feedback, independent practice, weekly and monthly reviews. Reviewing is simply reviewing concepts that are going to be built upon in the following lesson, providing them with the necessary scaffolds and prior information necessary to be successful. Presentation is similar to the UDL concept of representation in that you're stating the lesson goals, providing them with new materials and small steps, model procedures, and providing examples and unique, clear language to avoid digressions. The guided practice is likely the most important aspect of the explicit instruction process in that you're requiring high frequency of responses. This might take the shape of response cards, this might be think, pair, share, or even something as complicated as a Twitter newsfeed in which students use their tablets to provide anonymous responses that are then projected onto the board. Regardless of what steps that takes, is going to provide timely feedback, clues, prompts, and have students continuously practice until they are fluent in that concept, skill, or idea. Corrections and feedback. Students require constant feedback. So, reteach when necessary based on the feedback that you provided, and provide them with feedback so that they could progress accordingly. Independent practice. Inevitably, each one of these steps is going to build towards independent practice, allowing that student to be autonomous in his or her learning purposes and activities. Monitor initial practice attempts and have students continue practice until skills are automatic. There's mastery and then there's automaticity. We are looking for our students to gain automaticity through independent practice. And inevitably, similar to the responses and feedback, weekly and monthly reviews. Reviewing how successful a student is with a particular concept or skill, and altering or modifying your instruction based on it. Active participation, the 7th grade, Dr. Archer, breaking down a lesson based on explicit instruction principles. Part of this module is watching 2 or more videos by Dr. Archer, in which she attempts to illuminate what explicit instruction is through modeling. The one I would like to talk about today is the active participation instruction, the 7th grade, in which basically she's attempting to show the 7th grade students what expectations she has for them behaviorally and instructionally for the rest of the year. Dr. Archer begins by reviewing the expectations and experiences the students previously had within an instructional environment, explaining things like, we know that you've all had teachers before. How is it that they went about teaching a lesson? How is it that you went about participating? Then she presented the goals and purposes for the lesson in small chunks, revealing only one letter at a time. She provided the acronym SLAM. Then she ensured that no step was begun before the prior step was adequately understood. The key was she explicitly informed the students what it was that they were hoping to accomplish today and how this would build upon one another for future instructional purposes. With each example, she provided the students with opportunities to practice the skills with his or her peer. Sometimes they would practice the skill with a friend, sometimes they would practice it independently, but either way, each student was asked to illustrate how to ask a public question versus a private one, and furthermore, asked to demonstrate it based on the teacher's prompts. Then the teacher would go around, and as the students were completing the activity, she would say, yes, that's great, or no, this needs work, using other peers to use as modeling for their friends. When a student misunderstood the hand-over-heart private question technique, she provided the student with corrections, ensuring that the student understood the concept correctly before continuing on to the next. With each goal, the teacher provided the student with group and independent practice in order to both reinforce the concept and provide opportunities for mastery. Through this group process, individuals who were unsure about how to use these skills were able to use their peers as models. Furthermore, those who already mastered the concept are able to do so until they hit automaticity. While the lesson did not explicitly state how weekly or monthly reviews would be accomplished, the nature of the behavior and organizational management system she provided lends itself to constant reinforcement through students' actions and daily utilization within instruction. Is explicit instruction empirically supported? Simply, yes. Brothy and Good, 1986, identified several overarching relationships, instructional variables related to student achievement, including engagement time, content coverage, and level of success, each of these directly related to the tenets of explicit instruction developed earlier. Others, including Cage and Needles and Rosenshine and Stevens, have come to conclusions regarding explicit instruction practices, including a structured, explicit, and scaffolded approach to instruction has a positive impact on student achievement. As the research that we have read within this module illustrated, there have been countless research and studies, case studies that have been done that have reported that these steps and these structures provide students with the supports and scaffolding needed to be successful. Why is explicit instruction appropriate for students with disabilities? Well, similar to the UDL, good teaching practices are good for everyone, and what's good for students with disabilities is good for the rest of the class as well. Providing students with disabilities with clear expectations about what is to be learned allows them to anticipate what sort of information or what skills they need to utilize. Clarity of presentation. Whether it's a student with a disability or any other student, they need to be able to understand and comprehend what is being represented by the teacher. Multiple opportunities for students' response. Response and feedback are some of the most important aspects of the explicit instruction approach. Providing multiple opportunities for student response, including written, oral, or maybe even a drawing or a visual representation, allows for students to utilize their strengths in responding and representing or expressing their concept or their understanding of material. Active teacher monitoring of these responses. The responses are almost useless if the teacher does not use them to adapt his or her instruction or meet the student's needs based on what they're having difficulty with. Then frequent evaluation and feedback. We need to make sure that we provide our students with constant feedback and that we utilize whatever feedback they provide us to adapt and modify our instruction. If many students are having issues with a particular skill or a particular concept, we should take that to heart and utilize that information in order to adapt the instruction to meet the student's needs. Now, how is it that I've gone about implementing explicit instruction in my classroom in the past? The reality is, explicit instruction, for me at least, is something rather new, but a lot of the tenets or the strategies utilized in explicit instruction are things that we already know to be pedagogical best practices. I provided goals and expectations prior to every lesson. With every lesson plan that I wrote, I provided my students with the actual goals that I wrote down. I want them to know exactly what it is I'm hoping for them to accomplish and what it is I'm hoping for them to learn. And most importantly, the context. Why are they learning it? Then I would implement pre-teaching exercises to familiarize students with concepts prior to class. What I like to do is the flipped classroom approach, in which not only do they have the conceptual videos for the past in case they need remedial instruction, but they actually have the instruction prior to class. So they're familiar with the concept using that video, which is multimodal as well, prior to ever coming into class. So it builds upon what they already know and their schema to build upon unfamiliar knowledge. I use multiple visuals and auditory means of understanding directions and content. I always provide my students with auditory. I tell them what the directions and information is, and I always provide it in a digital or a visual medium as well. I like to either provide it on the board or through a multimedia presentation or interactive notes. I model, group, and guided practice and provide independent practice. This scaffolding process, in which I illustrate myself how to do something, provide the groups with an ability to do it so they can help one another out, and inevitably allow that independent student to master it on his or her own. I provide multiple opportunities for response, including peer-to-peer, whole class, flashcards. I've really gotten into the digital means. At my class at St. Joe's, we actually have iPads, which allow us to use Twitter feed responses. We could use the Padlet. Multiple opportunities for anonymous questions anonymous comments. For individuals who aren't prompted often to respond or don't like to respond within a large group or even a small group, this is a great way to get them engaged and involved in the lesson and to assess whether or not the group as a whole is understanding it without feeling incompetent or alienated because they don't understand. One of my favorite aspects of the explicit instruction has been the portfolio-oriented instruction. Basically, I provide, using iBook authors or other materials, methods to engage in material at their own pace. One of the most difficult parts is differentiating the classroom, in which you ensure that students who need remediation can do so, but provide autonomy in that task as well, and then others with enrichment opportunities. Using portfolio-oriented instruction, again, I use the iBook authors as a means of iBook authors as a means of portfolio creation. Students are allowed to go at their own pace. I use narration in order for them to listen to it without me having to actually be there to mediate the reading of directions. And for the students who are already progressed or mastered a concept, they're able to actually go on and complete enrichment activities. Regular feedback and responses via Google Docs, IM features, and online cloud services. At the end of every single unit, I provided them with a Google Forms, which provided me with the sort of feedback that I needed to know what was successful, what worked well, what did they need, how was this confusing, or how did it work well, so I could accommodate that into my next instruction. Daily, weekly, and monthly reviews available within portfolios that illustrate development over a period of time, demonstrating the mastered material through a progressive approach. The portfolio system was probably one of the best things that I implemented, especially for the ELA classroom, simply because it provided them with the constant feedback that they could reference all at once with a table of contents, and also their parents could view it and they could see how they've developed and progressed throughout a period of time. That is the end of my explicit instruction module reflection. Thank you very much and have a good day.